Hey there guys, Nabil here and welcome to NeoGear, a new video series where we will tackle and talk about specific hardware that will help you make the best use of your NeoGear or SNK gaming consoles or software. Now in this first episode we're going to be talking about Supergun, and specifically the Retroelectronik Supergun Pro Gamer. Now what's a Supergun, you might ask? Now imagine you're in the lookout of buying some arcade hardware, as in PCB or motherboard. However, you don't have the soldering skills or understanding the power levels, nor do you have an actual cabinet nor space for it. So you just want to buy an arcade motherboard and plug it to your television or your computer. So that's what a Supergun does. So a Supergun allows you to connect your motherboard, your hardware motherboard, to it and then power it directly from it. You can also connect your controllers, your video out without the need of soldering anything. Now, the Supergun Pro Gamer by Retroelectronik uses a JAMA connector. Now these things are a standard and were a standard in the 90s, and most arcade motherboards use them. In my case, because as you know, if you were following my channel and my videos, I was on the lookout for a Hyper NeoGeo 64, which I finally got. Now the Hyper NeoGeo 64 comes in two revisions. The first one, revision 1, does not use the JAMA port. Luckily the one I have is a revision 2, and that uses a JAMA port, so I can connect it directly. Now let's take a closer look at this thing over here. So first of all, you have your ATX power connector. So plug in an ATX power supply to it, which is the same you'd use in any computer, will allow you to power your motherboard. In my case, I'm using a 250 watts power supply, and it's plenty to power the Hyper NeoGeo 64. Then we have our video out, and this thing puts both video and audio. This uses SCART, and if you know SCART, it was pretty standard back in the 90s. In Europe, it was not quite popular in the US. You also have the ability, using the Pro version of the Supergun, to separate the audio into a 2 stereo channel. You can connect your headphones or speakerphones directly to this thing. And over here you have more options. So you have your controllers. So that's how you connect your controller. This uses the standard NeoGeo controllers. If you don't have those, you can use adapters. Retroelectronik sells a couple. One for Super Nintendo. We're going to take a look at it later on. They also sell one for the Genesis or Saturn. Or you can use something like Brooks adapter that allows you to use your PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 arcade controllers or gamepads to connect to any NeoGeo system. Then we have a few buttons here. We have one for the credit, so allows you to put money, basically, coins into the PCB. Credit for the first player, for the second player. Then you have a couple buttons that allow you to enter into test mode. And this, for example, for the Hyper NeoGeo or even the MVS, it allows you to go into the test mode or the service mode of the game. Then you can change the language, the difficulty, etc. There's also a few other options here, like for example, you could change the sound from mono to stereo or vice versa. And then you have a switch for the auto fire, so you can use auto fire if you want. I have no use for that, but that's an option that you can use. And finally, and we're going to look at that later on, you have a voltage meter, so you can know exactly how much voltage is going to your PCB. And obviously you have the power switch. Now let's go ahead and test the Retroelectronik Supergun and see how it does. Alright, so let's go ahead and give this a try. So I have the Hyper NeoGeo 64 here, the revision 2 as I mentioned. And at the back of it, there's a JAMA connector. So let's go ahead. So as you can see it, here's the JAMA connector. Now this is only on the revision 2, remember. So if you're in the market for one, make sure you're getting a revision 2 and not a first revision, which it does not have that. So basically all you have to do is it's plug and play, really. There you go. Push a little bit. I'm just going to put this one beneath it just so that the weight of the SCART cable does not break anything. I mean, this thing feels solid, but you just want to be extra careful. Let's go ahead and connect the SCART cable. and that's the power supply I mentioned. It's 250 watts, and it uses your standard ATX connector. So we'll go ahead and plug that. This one again is a 250 watts, and it's plenty to power the Hyper NeoGeo 64. All right. Now, I'm using the OSSC is connected to an OSSC, and what this thing does, well, we'll review it later on. It basically allows you to connect retro and old consoles that use connections like the SCART to your new television or an HD TV. And I'm having this one connected to a device, to the AverMedia capture device. Let's go ahead. So just turn it on. So again, this is going through my computer, and it's going through the AverMedia capture card. Now, everything seems to be connected. Let's go ahead and turn it on. All right, that's pretty much it. Now, as you can see, the Pro version, as I mentioned before, it shows that voltage meter. The other version, the normal one, does not show it, but this one does. So that's one of the main differences. I mentioned the other differences before, like the different switches, but this thing, the voltage screen, it shows you the actual voltage that is going to your hardware, in this case the Hyper NeoGeo 64. So I know there's going to be no over voltage, as the Hyper NeoGeo takes 5 voltage, and I can see it's 4.99, which is correct. And as I said, the Pro version has more controls, more switches, etc. So I'll have a link, again, as I said, in the description, where you can buy the Pro version. It's for 60 euros, and the normal version, as I previously mentioned, is 50. So for 10 euros, might as well go with the Pro one. I'm gonna go ahead and connect the controller. Now I have, well, let's get it to work first. Okay, let's put the OSSC on the correct input. And there you go. It's the Samurai Showdown 64 Warriors Rage. And as you can see, it's working beautifully. There's sound and everything. And looking at the buttons, I can add credits. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Or I can enter into the service mode, which will allow me to change the options for the game, such as the language, the difficulty, etc. So let's go ahead and connect the AES controller. All you have to do is just plug it in. And as you can see, I'm moving through the options here, so it's just working perfectly. Let's go ahead and get out of the test mode. There you go, it's picking up the signal right now. And let's go ahead and put some more credits here so we can test the game and see how well it responds with the controller and everything connected. I'm really glad I found out this thing, so it allowed me to finally use this Hyper NeoGeo 64. So there you go, pressing the start button works, and as you can see, I am connected, perfectly. Everything is working perfectly. A button is working as the A button, etc. The other option is, if you do not have an AES controller, you can use something like this. The Brook PlayStation 4 to NeoGeo, and it allows you to connect your PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3 controller to a NeoGeo. And as you can see on the other end, it has that standard NeoGeo connector, and we'll review it in another video. Now, if you don't have an OSSC, because what the OSSC does, not only does it allow you to connect your retro console to the like a new television, but it also allows you to add things like scan lines. It also makes sure that there's no input lag, obviously, but it also allows you to have scan lines, which really help with new televisions. Well, something like the Hyper NeoGeo doesn't really need scan lines. If you're using something like an MVS or any other old arcade machine, scan lines are a must if you want to have a good screen. Now, if you don't have the OSSC, the Retroelectronik guys also have another option. So this is a scan line generator, as it's called, and you can connect it using the VGA out, which is on the Retroelectronik Supergun, and connect it to this little thing before connected to a monitor, and it does add the scan lines. Now, I have not tested it because I have the OSSC, but it's available if you want to go ahead and buy it. Now, we talked about connecting the AES controller. However, if you don't have something like that and you don't have the Brook like for connecting the PlayStation 4, there's another option, again, from these guys at Retroelectronik. So they have these converters, as I mentioned before, that allows you to connect some other controllers to the PCB or to the Supergun. So for example, we have one here, as you will see here in a second. It's the converter from NeoGeo to Super Nintendo. Yep, that's the Super Nintendo controller if you have not seen one in a while. And we're gonna give it a test here. Let's go ahead and connect it. Remove the AES one, and let's go ahead and connect it. So you plug it in, there's a light coming in showing that it's properly plugged in, and I'm gonna go ahead and try this Super Nintendo controller. Now it's not an authentic one, but it'll do. Let's go ahead and plug it in. And there you go. And now let's see if it works. I've not used one of these in a very long time. And there you go. Yep, there you go. And it's working. I can choose. All right, let me go with Homeworld. And all the buttons are working. It's perfect for. I've not played with this in a long time. But let's go ahead and try some moves here. Yeah, it's perfectly working. There's a Senpuretsu's on. I don't feel any lag, to be honest. So yeah, this is a very good option if you don't have the Brook of the converter, or if you don't have an AES controller. So I've been using this Supergun for about a week now, and I'm very happy about how this thing works. It feels really solid. It's cheap for the price, and it basically allows me to make full use of the Hyper NeoGeo. So very happy with it. So this was our review of the Retroelectronik Supergun Pro Gamer Edition. Now this little thing costs 60 euros. There's a standard edition for 50 euros, which does not have a lot of the options that this one have. However, for 10 euros more or $10, it's really a bargain to get the Pro Edition version. Now, there is a link in the description where you can visit their website and you can purchase the Supergun Pro. If it's available, these things run out of stock quickly. They have other, as I said, they have the scanline generator, the converters for controllers, so you can check the website and see what they have. Now, I hope you guys like this video. Please subscribe if you have not done so, and don't forget to tick the bell so that you are aware whenever a new video drops from NeoGeo Now. Now, until next time, thank you guys for watching.